Most books do not see it commercially. Most books sell a few copies or 0 copies. I don't care if you're writing to market or not. This is true of all books. Now, writing to market will reduce variance. Like, it's more likely that your book will succeed if you're writing to market. But if it does, it may not be like so successful as the oddball book that sells a huge amount because the market just loved it. The key is, like, you shouldn't go into this thinking, I will write this and this and this and this, and then I'll make $1 million. That's not how it works. You get a chance, no guarantee. Not even if you're writing the market, not even if you're writing a RPG, doesn't matter. The market may like it, the market may not. I have no control over it. That's the long and the short.
This is the CritRPG Podcast, your one-stop shop for everything lit RPG, progression fantasy, and Royal Road. Hi everyone, and welcome to the CritRPG Podcast, the only podcast that puts the city above the dungeon. With me today is Matthew P. Schmidt, who writes the City and the Dungeon series. How are you doing?
Pretty good. Here I am.
Still excited, I know. I haven't eaten that many people who were on a podcast yet. So don't worry about it. Okay, cool. You write a little series called City in the Dungeon, which is in most circles that I frequent, so Facebook, Reddit, and also like Royal Road and Discord. A rather unknown story, but it has sold quite well, and I did thoroughly enjoy it when I read it. Mm-hmm. And we got together because a listener of mine insisted that you come on and facilitated the entire thing. So thank you again, Johnny, for that. And without further ado, why don't you sell me on your book if I hadn't read it yet?
Well, it's about a city and
okay, well, thanks. But
it's unique because I wrote it without having read like any other lit RPG, except maybe like watching Sword Art Online, which is its own thing. So it's hard to talk about your own book.
I have made the experience that once you let go of any pretense of shame, it is very, very good to talk about your own book. So come on.
Okay.
Tell me why I would like it. Tell me why you like it.
I played this pretty much forgotten game called Mordor way back in the day. Mm-hmm. And I really loved it. It's like a single player game, but it was this whole world. I mean, there were other creatures in the dungeon, other people in the dungeon, mm-hmm. and this market where other people would buy and sell items, even though it was all virtual. There was no online mm-hmm. connection. And I was really fascinated by it, even though it was a shareware game and only could really play the first levels or so. Mm-hmm. It's a very hard game, so it was that was pretty much all I ever did. Mm-hmm. And I thought, what if you made a world where you just extrapolated everything okay, so there's a giant dungeon full of monsters, and well, you have to go in to fight them and get stuff. That's the only source of magic in the world is this dungeon. And you can become sort of immortal by touching the cornerstone and becoming a delver. That's where you get your stats and your levels and all that. Mm-hmm. But you have to keep eating crystal to survive or you die, potentially for good if no one else brings you back to life after you've starved. But mm-hmm. as you eat crystal and go to the dungeon to get more experience, you have to eat more and more crystals. You have to go further in the dungeon to survive. And so mm-hmm. our hero is an immigrant to the dungeon. He's there just to get money for his people living back at home. And then after a chance event, he ends up hooked up with a powerful guild known as High House Black, and he has a crush on the princess, so to speak, the main girl of the house, and he tries to delve to impress her and get together. So that's
and we'll see how that turns out.
Well,
yeah, it'll be that. Which is one of the cardinal sin romances in your lit RPG. Cardinal sin right there, Matthew. If I recommend it now, people will like throw me to the wolves. No, I'm joking only half, because like, yes, there are romance elements in it, but I thought they were very, very well done.
Yeah.
It wasn't like, like it wasn't written like it was written by a teenager.
Well,
It felt I personally thought it felt nuanced. I liked it. It wasn't like completely like heads over tails and like, oh God, everything is awesome now. Actually, there were quite a few challenges, and they were, I think, explored decently well. I'm saying decently well because I'm German, so that means it was good. But yeah, I like I said, I thoroughly enjoyed the book, and I also enjoyed the world building. Like especially, there was one thing I don't think you said at the beginning was that there was an apocalypse, like literally like the apocalypse.
Yeah.
And this, like, the dungeon kind of like sprung out of that, and I thought that was really cool, because it so many of system apocalypses or RPG apocalypses or whatever you want to call them, if you want to be legally distinct, focus on the beginning of the apocalypse, and there are so few that actually focus on what happened after. Like, apocalypses they're not self-sustaining.
Yeah.
Right? They can't, like, they're seasons of change. They cannot be forever. Change is not forever. And so what happens after everyone who's good or bad or on one side or the other has died, and once people have like found some sort of equilibrium with the monsters, like what happens then? Which is always interesting, I think.
Yeah, I've read a lot of.
And you answered that question.
I read a lot of system apocalypses, I read the system apocalypse, and the thing is, like, there's only so many ways the world can end, and we went through 2020 where the world sort of ended, and I was like, it didn't really pan out like the books. It sort of did. It often did it, and I'm like, maybe society wouldn't disintegrate. Maybe there would actually be organized ways to fight back the monsters or the system or whatever. Like, not just, we're all alone and we have to fight each other, and obviously this like just total chaos. I mean, come on. People can band together at least a little. And not just like the one guild that the hero runs. Come on now.
Yeah. Have you read Apocalypse Parenting?
No, actually.
I think that has kind of like the same premise, and it's written as like a system apocalypse as it happens. And I had the author here on the podcast, and I completely agree with her that when like order collapses and like we don't have internet anymore, people usually tend to band together.
Yeah.
Like if you're out there and you're listening and you're thinking like, oh no, I'm the only person who like really wants to have like good connections or something. No, you cannot be the only one. Otherwise, like civilization wouldn't exist. So people like the communities. People like strength in numbers. But and I think this whole, I don't want to get too into it right now, but the idea of like the individual being more important than the masses, that's a thought that only really started appearing in the late 80s or like the 80s, right? And I think that being stronger together is a good theme. But again, actually, yeah, your story doesn't really like just center around like the one hero. Like, your hero isn't just the only hero. Like, he's part of the team, right? And they all have their own goals and stuff, which I think is very interesting.
That was one of my things. Like, every person in the party has a different reason for being in the party, and some of them just leave because it's like, well, I've already reached my mission. I don't want to keep going down and down and getting more and more crystal and having to be a super high level delver, because then I'll dive even farther down.
Yeah. And there's like, obviously, there's a big incentive like to like see how far this thing goes, like how deep this thing goes, right? And do they find out or do not find out? Well, you have to read the book for that. But I thought like whether or not they did was handled pretty well. And it also explored the implications of it, like in the city politics. I thought it was cool.
Yeah.
So you started writing this because there was nothing like it, which is that I don't have these sort of people a lot on the podcast anymore.
Well,
right?
Basically, I was writing a super serious, important book, and I was burning out on it. I thought I'll just try my hand at like what if there's just like the RPG rules with the real thing? I mean, fine. So started writing. I was like, oh, this is so much better, and I forgot about the important project. It's still not out. I don't know if it'll ever be out. The RPG is done and it's out. People liked it.
Nice. How do you do that? Like, how do you abandon? How do you heartlessly abandon a project like that?
Well, I have trouble not abandoning projects. That's one of the things I want to work on is actually finishing stuff. But
okay.
That project in question, I was super burned out on it because it was just gloom and doom, and it's like there's this humanity is doomed. There's basically no way they can stop it other than, well, I mean, basically the one person who can stop it, her bloodline is about to end because she's the last one left, and it's basically her only goal is to keep humanity going for as long as she can before it's all over. And like I said, gloom, doom, I was like, talking about it, I'm like, I don't even agree with some of the ideas in this book anymore. So it's I haven't worked on it in years. Gosh. I mean, every now and then I would like try a little stab and I'm like, this is not something I want to write anymore. So that
makes sense.
Also, like I don't do serials, so it's not like, okay, you write a serial and you get like 20 chapters and quit. It's like, it's more like no one ever knows these books that I never finished. So that's why I don't talk about unfinished books, because then everyone's like, happy when you finish it. Well, this is why I don't tell people about the books. When they don't manage to finish them because they hit some snag.
So are you going to write City and Dungeon 3?
Yeah, I'm working on it right now, but
you just now whenever I could go like, Matthew, why didn't you?
No. Problem was there was a bit of backlash from some of the stuff in City and Dungeon 2, and also there's the whole legal, financial tangle emotion thing with Anonymous Press. So I was burned out pretty heavily, but I'm not burned out anymore. So it's time for sure. I'm going to write it. I'm going to release it. And God willing, people will like it.
It's going to be awesome. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, it sounds pretty good. Like, I was thinking about your Doom and Gloom project, right? Because I always try to talk about this bring a little bit of myself into this so people can kind of like see my angle and see if they can relate. Because I've been writing a kind of doomy story for a while. It's not really doomy. It's one layer of it is, hey, what would happen if there was an apocalypse in a fantasy land? Right? And what would happen after that? And how would society evolve after it? Which is completely insane. And why would I ever do that to myself? Because not only you have to like invent a fantasy thing first, then you have to like slap an apocalypse on top of it and then somehow extrapolate how that works. But that's me. I like torturing myself, I guess. I should have called it torture bearer. My God. So my point here is I've thought about this thing a lot with the Doom, right? So why is this no longer fun to write? Why is this not just draining, but why is it not fun? Because, I mean, Dungeon Crawler Carl most likely will not end well. And so it's fun, right? It's fun. And here's why. A story is always, not just in my opinion, but I think I'm parroting like many other people who came before me, it's always about the question, can they do it?
Yeah.
And if you already know that no, they can't, or yes, they can, then the story isn't good, right? Even with Cradle, like, spoiler alert, Lyndon gets really OP at the end. You still don't know if he can do it.
Yeah.
Which is like why it's so interesting. And when you mentioned your Gloom story and you said like, well, everyone's gonna die, and we all know it. That's not fun to write.
No. Well, also, okay, I used to be a lot more right wing when I was younger, not to get into politics, just other than just like a little tiny bit. I used to be way more right wing, and then the story was going to be super right wing. I shifted to more moderate, and then it's like I don't want to write that kind of story anymore. I don't hold to those views so like rigidly anymore. If I do go back, it will be with a different perspective because I don't want to just. I would like my books to be sort of a bridge between people who think one thing and the other. I would not want my books to be like, you could only like this if you agree with me, because who wants to be that kind of book? No one does. Not even if people agree with you.
Yeah. There was recently a book I was browsing a publisher for because of my agent job, and there were several publishers we had to like reject out of hand because, well, like two publishers, a couple, because like they were a good fit. They would have fit this book very well, but at the same time, they had very interesting Twitter profiles, and I was like, I can't in good conscience sell this book there because like the author doesn't want to be like A, the author doesn't want to be connected to these people, and B, also it would like misrepresent what the book is and it wouldn't be a good fit. And yeah, I also strongly think that like people need connection right now, and a lot of people, there's like when things are very stressful, there's always two impulses, right? So you either like do it on your own or you like find a group, and people like to do both kind of, and they always like everyone's always the hero in their own story, right? And I think one thing that humanity as a whole has kind of forgotten how to do because of like the massive barrage of like information from internet. Like, by the way, I'm on an internet podcast, so hi, thank you. Is relating to people who you don't understand at first. And I'm not saying this like, oh, this is super easy, you should do this. It is hard. Like enduring other people's opinions, even if they seem scary to you at first, is super hard. Now, I'm not talking to like, hey, if someone threatens to kill you, you don't need to talk to them. Like that's 100%, right? You don't owe your attention to anyone. But we need to be able to understand other people. Like just understand, not like forgive or accept or whatever, but understand. That's important because otherwise you cannot convince people.
To me, the thing is, like, it's easy to believe that you're so right. Everyone else who's clearly a normal, reasonable person would agree with you. But there are normal, reasonable people believing basically anything. There are normal, reasonable people who are Christians, who are Jews, who are atheists, who are, I don't know, Sikhs, Taoists,
agnostics.
Agnostics and agnostics.
Yeah, it's
the thing is, in this day and age, you just gotta like reach out and be like, okay, I don't agree with you, but I'm at least going to sit down and listen to what you say before saying anything on my own. Not everyone will do that, but if I can, I will do that.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's always about like, I don't know, like finding out your own stuff first, right? So you yourself are the only person who you can really change. You're the only person you really have power over, unless you like, resort to like violence. But and even then, it's important. Like it's almost impossible to like really change someone unless they allow it. And I think that matters of faith aside, like just like listening to people and like really getting to know what they want and why they want it is the only way you will ever be able to win any argument. Because only by knowing what exactly they want, like what's the underlying emotion is and all that kind of stuff, do you really get to the point where you can make not a compromise, but an agreement. And and I through work I've been exposed to several different viewpoints. I have my own, obviously, but one thing I've noticed, like I have been noticing for like the last 1.5 years, is that if you're looking at like political stuff, I don't want to get too political either, but like just political stuff in general. If you are breaking down the arguments and the argument structure, not like, I'm not talking about veracity, I'm talking about like the argument structure. Everyone is making the same arguments and thinking they aren't. And it's in some ways it gives me hope, because I know that humanity in and of itself is like not that different. We're just different in expressing our needs, and that is sometimes very hard. But yeah. Anyway, back to CritRPG. Now, like if you want more of that, that's all in the Patreon content, because like I try to not go super deep into like politics here, but I think with you, it's kind of important to know that there is like a religious touch in your book.
There is,
which I appreciated, right? I'm not saying this because like I'm super like faithful. I'm not, but I really enjoyed reading that because it was unabashedly very authentic, and I did like that, right? So I can appreciate that for what it is.
One thing is with the labyrinth religions, because people are going to worship the dungeon, they're going to worship any cool thing, as people do. I thought, I want to write this in such a way that were things to be different, I might have actually believed this. Not just like, these people are clearly wrong, but like, well, maybe the dungeon is a judgment sent by God. What else could it be? So I played that out, and I'm not sure how many people got it. That's where I went.
Yeah, and like there's like different nuances to that too, right? There's like people who like, it's very interesting to see that kind of reflected, that it's not just like veneration or something like that. People question that religion as well, and there's like schisms, and like other people have like other opinions. And I really liked the way that your characters dealt with it too, right? That some people were like really into it, and that they had fights over it, and they were still staying in the same party. I like that. It was fun. Okay. Going to the second question of the podcast. We do tangents here. What's the best advice you've ever gotten as a writer?
I got this right in Revise after I had already started publishing, but I'm going to just give it out now. And this is technically business advice, but if you're self-publishing, it doesn't matter really. Most books do not seed commercially. Most books sell a few copies or 0 copies. And I don't care if you're writing to market or not. This is true of all books. Now, writing to market will reduce variance. Like, it's more likely that your book will succeed if you're writing to market. But if it does, it may not be like so successful as the oddball book that sells a huge amount because the market just loved it. But the key is, like, you shouldn't go into this thinking, I will write this and this and this and this, and then I'll make $1 million. That's not how it works.
Yeah.
I believe Selkie Myth, who writes Beneath the Dragon Moods, he said basically, he describes it as working 60-hour days for weeks on end with just a chance.
Yeah.
Which is pretty much how it is. You get a chance. No guarantee. Not even if you're writing the market. Not even if you're writing RPG. Doesn't matter. The market may like it. The market may not. You have no control over it. That's the long and short.
Statistically, it is better to work at McDonald's flipping burgers than it is to write a RPG. Like, you earn more on average, or like in a book in general, right? At least at McDonald's, you have like a stable income.
That is another thing.
Yeah. With like, I mean, like, again, I'm an agent, and by now I've been doing this for a while, and I'm looking at this, like, these author payouts, and yes, Achilles, our agency, represents a lot of very, very big people who make a lot of money. And we also represent people who make a decent household living with it. And then we represent some people who don't. Init RPG is a bit different because there was a bit of a Wild West going on until recently. But if you're writing in traditional pub, it's insane. There's like this list called publishing paid, like hashtag publishing paid me, and if you're looking at that, there's some names on there, and you will blink 3 times before like going what? Because some of these like really big books, I can't remember any names off of the list right now, but there were some where it was like they got how much, and it was not too much. Like they got like not like $1 million or 2 million or whatever, like what Brandon Sanderson gets, but he gets more. He gets 10 or 15, but like they got like 10,000, 20,000 maybe, and like the average advance on all these books was like 15 grand. And in Lit RPG, we're eating very well. I have not signed a deal. Can I say that? I can say that. I have not signed a deal that didn't at least give 30,000 for 3 books. Right? So yeah. I mean, there are some outliers, and I had to balance up and down, but yes, Lit RPG eats very well. So I'm still okay. So actually, I would like your opinion on this. Do you think that because Royal exists and Wattpad and Scribble Hub, that the people who usually wouldn't get read are completely fine with just writing on there and sharing with like a bunch of internet friends?
Well, I'm part of a group called the Catholic Writers Guild. It's all Catholic writers. We also do Orthodox Christians if they want to show up. I don't know if any of them do. And I would say the majority of the writers I know are not looking for commercial success. They either do it for fun or because they believe God called them, which fair enough. I mean, God calls you, got to go answer. So, I think, yes, there are people on Royal Road and Wattpad and every other platform. Even fan fiction. I mean, you can't go sell a fanfic that's not legal. People will write like 300 chapter long fanfic serials for the love of it. I mean, that's the only thing unless you're like the 1 in a million that you just chisel up the serial numbers, then you sell it for like big bucks to a publisher.
50 Shades.
From those, most people who write fanfic do not assent from it.
Yeah. 50 Shades of Grey.
Oh, there you go.
Is a fanfic with the serial numbers chiseled off, for example. There were some others. I forget. But yeah, it's.
Wasn't it like
I kind of
one of the books of the 3 Body Problem, that series? I thought there was like a serial that got sucked in because it was so good. The author was like, sure, one of the books.
I don't know that. That's interesting.
That's what I've heard.
Because
every now and then, sometimes there is just a serial or a story or whatever that is so good and it gets sucked in. It's so rare. It's not even worth thinking about if you're a fan fiction author. So do it for the love of it. Maybe if you want a commercial success, try writing your handle RPG or romance or something. But that's the long and the short of it.
It's like, I mean, if you said if God called you, I would just say in general, if you feel a calling, right? In German, the word for job is literally like Beruf, so it is short for Berufung, which is a calling, right? So if you feel that, if you feel as though you want to write something, just do it. No one's gonna stop you. And the beauty of it is, if you're just writing for yourself and no one else, no one can stop you.
Yeah.
Right? There are, I mean, especially in America, there's very few things you can't write. I mean, that's That's how Zogarth got so big. He literally just wrote like 2 million words, like 1 million words of Primal Hunter just for himself, and then put it on Railroad because he could. Right? So go ahead, write for yourself. And
yes,
the only thing like that I would agree with you here, like I'm agreeing a lot with you, but the point I want to make is don't do it for the money. Like that's how companies fail. Like don't try to be EA. Don't try to be EA. Like don't make art for money. That makes no sense because people can smell that, pardon my French, bullshit a mile away. So yeah.
The thing is, if you wanted to do like e-commerce for a living, don't do it with books. Do it with drop shipping or make your own product or something. Like, okay, so you want to buy a like $9 book, because you're doing well. Someone else, the same amount of Facebook ads, sells like a $100 widget from China. They're doing way better than you ever possibly could with a book.
Yeah.
Like, success for an author is 6 figures. Success for a dropshipper is some huge number that, But I mean, I don't know about dropshipping as a B thing, because, I mean, it's like a business like any other. People fail. But, like, its potential is way higher than even Lit RPG or romance. The people who make the millions are rare. It's not everyone.
I mean, if you're looking at it, like even some people that have signed with us who have a lot of reads on Royal Road are not millionaires. They're not making millions of these books. And let's say like if you're above, like even if you're above 10,000 reads on Royal Road, like followables, sorry, then you're still not earning millions.
Yeah,
those people are very rare. Like if you're above 15,000, then we can talk about like you making $1 million with this, like maybe in 3 years. And if you're in the top 10, then yes, of course, you're going to be a millionaire. Especially if you're smart. Call me Slacker. But I think. Where do you think this comes from? Where do you think this is like obsession comes from with Lit RPG? Is it because? Actually, no. Let me hear your thoughts first.
Lit RPG obsession.
The writing and making money with it. I have no idea where it comes from.
Well, the thing is, at the beginning, back when it was wide open, it was like you could write a Lit RPG with just a little, and it was like so well. I mean, like there were authors who like got started early and they made so much money, and it's like, well, people like, okay, let's say you write a great book, great artistically, people love it, but you make, I don't know, $1,000 off of it. Well, that's the most you can measure up. You can't measure like artistic merit or how much people love it, but you can measure like, well, I made $2,000 a month or whatever. That's measurable. So people compare to what they can see and not the unseeable thing of this book is great or this book is terrible or even this book is something God wanted. Because I mean, God doesn't reveal he doesn't give like a 5-star rating to books. He's just up there doing God. I mean, he doesn't have to tell us so, unless he wants to.
Imagine like you're waking up in the morning and like you have like one rating is like God himself or herself or themselves going like, yo, this book was dope. Can you imagine that? But pardon the blasphemy, but it's so I have like one theory why this might happen, why people might get into this. And that is because like some authors like do reveal their numbers, and you could see it on Patreon for a while. And Zorgal still has his number up. If you ever want to like open your eyes really wide, like if you want to wake up in the morning, go open Zorgal's Patreon and check out the number. And then remember it's per month. That's like heavy blinking, but at the same time, that's also just like 25% of his income, maybe, because like the books sell way better than that. But that might be a reason. But I always wonder, like, I often talk about this in the podcast. I like doing pottery, It's relaxing. It's something to do with your body. You do something with your hands. And you form something really quick, and then you can see if you like it or not. Then you can do it again, and you're doing it for yourself and no one else.
Yeah,
and that's nice. Like, and no one ever came up to me in the pottery shop and going like, "Wow, that's a very cool vase." I'm like, "Thank you." And he's like, "How much money are you going to earn with that?" Like, no one does that. When you play out there playing basketball or soccer in the park or softball or whatever,
yeah.
like, how often do like people walk past them and go like, "Yo, kid, why are you not like in the NFL yet, or like in the NBL yet? Is it NBL, NBA? Was it National Basketball Association
NBA,
League?
NBN.
NBA, yeah." I was confused because of an MBA, but like why you're not like professional yet? Like, no one does that. It's just with authors.
Well, the other thing is like, okay, because books get copied. I mean, it's not like, okay, I don't know, Pirate ABA or however the girl who
Pirate
wrote
Abba.
for Pirate ABBA takes
Yeah.
like, it's not like she takes one copy of her book and sits it on a pedestal. Like, this is the one copy in existence. You may not touch. You can just look at it. I mean, that's not how it is.
Yeah.
There's like not billions, but like millions of copies of it out there. People like read it, download it, pay for it. It's the audiobooks, all that. So, like,
And
it has a lot
more
of
soon,
reach.
yes.
It has a lot of
Yeah.
reach, which translates into money for her, I think. I mean, looked at her Patreon, I was like, if each of those people are paying $1, because it doesn't have total amount, she'll pay $1. She is making a huge amount of money. But
I can check. they're one of our clients. But it is a huge amount of money, yes.
But like, it's correlated with how many readers she has. So there's always going to be a thing of like, the more famous you are, the more money you'll be simultaneously making. Probably, not necessarily. So it's like, well, so-and-so is making some huge amount of money. That means he or she must have like millions of readers. And, I want to be like that, but I can't. And envy comes in. And envy, God says no to envy twice in the 10 Commandments. The 9th and 10th Commandment say, do not covet. Thou shalt not covet. Don't do it. It ruins your life. It ruins other people's lives. So don't covet. Just don't. Don't compare.
Don't compare yourself. Like, I mean, like it's in the Old Testament. It's in Stoic writing. It's everywhere. Like, ego is the enemy. If you start comparing yourself to someone else, you've already lost.
Yeah.
And it's not easy. It really isn't easy not to do that. But because you're always comparing yourself to someone else, like, it's unfortunately it's a very human kind of interaction. Like, you're looking at someone else and you're checking, hey, do I fit in with this person?
Yeah.
Like, how are they different? There's even a school of thought that says like we identify ourselves by seeing who we are not, right? So I am not you because I'm not American, right? That means that I have my own identity, like this sort of like thing.
Yeah.
It's a very postmodern thing. No, actually, it's modern, but it's hard. It's hard not to do it.
It's our fallen human nature. I mean, this is what happens when you turn away from God. I mean, for the whole of humanity, no one is immune from this except the Virgin Mary. So, aside from her, we all have to deal with desire to say, well, so and so is higher in social status than I am, because that's what it comes out to in the end: social status. Like if I were to go onto a Discord and say, "Hey, everyone," and people's like, "Oh, you're Matthew Schmidt. That's pretty cool." If like Tao Wong or Pirate ABA or Selkie Myth does, that's like, oh my gosh. In the end, they're just people. I mean, it's not like any of these, like, me or anyone else, are going to live longer or shoot laser beams out of our eyes or whatever. Cultivation
you don't know Abba.
Having more money, but cultivation by having more money is a cool idea.
Yeah,
money cultivation.
Yeah, it's, and I mean, like, you know the Matthews principle, right? You probably know it.
The people who have more, like the snowball effect.
The rich shall get richer, and the poor shall get poorer. It's there's something called the halo effect, right? Like, as if I think I'm butchering it, but like, if you have a lot, people believe that you must have earned it. So that means that you're good at something. And I'm not going to talk more about this because like this road goes straight into like current politics, but it's I can still say that like every single Discord I'm in that Sulky is also in, he's cool. Like we're just chatting, and like he pops up every once in a while, gives his opinion, and like everyone's cool about it. But that's authors, and I feel as though like the author community is small enough for there to be like a lot of kinship. But I know for a fact that if Shirt or Matt Dinneman show up, that's a bit different because they're also like more elusive. So Shirt and Matt don't show up in Discord a lot, but when they do, it's a bit of a splash. But
yeah,
for all the issues I have with parasocial relationships, I do like that they humanize people a bit more. And if you're interacting with people on a day-to-day basis and they're not getting too big, I think it's better. I personally don't want to be famous. I'm probably going to be at some point if I continue doing what I'm doing, but I really don't want to be. Because
I experienced some fame when City Ninja first came out, and it was like big. Because when it first came out, it was pretty famous. And its fame is really weird because, like, okay, your self-identity, to some extent, depends on what other people think about you. Like, if people say you're a good artist, you think you're a good artist. When you're famous, people think that you're not really even human. Like, you're a demigod. You're an incarnate avatar of awesome, and that's just going to mess with your head. And it messed with my head. One of the reasons I burned out.
Yeah, you make it sound very appealing, but it's not.
It's not. It's definitely not. I do not really want to be famous either, but you got to write. What happens, happens.
So how was that for you?
How was the fame?
Yeah.
It was fun at first, and then it messed with my self-image. And then I didn't post for a while, and I sort of got forgotten, and that also really messed with my self-image. So I want to be... if it happens again, I want to be more careful with it, is how I put it. Because, I mean, I could do good things. I mean, if people listen to me, I can preach the gospel to them, but also I don't want to preach myself to them. I don't want to be like a character in other people's minds that isn't real. I just want to be Matthew P. Schmidt. Or whatever that means.
Yeah, being yourself. I think it's one of the things people underestimate. I would hate that, like, for two reasons. One is I struggle a lot with like masking, right? So with like pretending to be someone who I'm not. Because it's how I got through life. And I recently started reading through Taylor Swift lyrics. I didn't even listen to the music, not my style, but I read to the lyrics, and I was like, oh, that's why people like her so much. Like, you really feel as though she gets you. Yeah. And then she has like this like couple of like lyrics where she talks about like being the monster in the room. And that's something I'm afraid of, right? Where you walk in, and I once had I don't want to get into the story too much, but like I know some important, like, quote unquote important people by seeing them, by being in the same room with them. I don't know them personally, but whenever someone walks into a room like that, like, something physical changes. Yeah, it is interesting, and you cannot not have like some sort of like strong emotional reaction to this person when they come in. And it stays with you for a while. And I don't want to be that. Sorry, because of the whole like masking thing. Because like it's no longer you putting on a mask to appease people. It's people putting on a mask on you, so you fit their idea of you, and that is horrifying to me.
It is what it is, but it's something. Well, I can imagine some authors go for a pen name just to dodge the, like, well, if he does take off, which can happen. It's not, your book is not doomed to fail, even if it's not written to market. Success can happen. Well, then what? I mean, people don't treat you as the same person anymore. That's super weird and terrifying.
It's one of the reasons why ABBA does it. Like, I am literally one active part of their agency, and I don't know their name. I don't know their address. I don't know nothing. The only person in the agency who knows is my colleague Drew, and I don't want to know, because like they quite correctly said like, hey, I want to be able to go to cons. I want to be able to like go somewhere and just enjoy being at the con and like talking to people and like getting to know them as people without them knowing way more about me than I know about them. I think Seth Meyers once said that like being famous is like having dementia in a small town. Everyone knows you, but you don't know them.
Yeah.
And that's the second part I don't like. And then the third one is the higher you rise, the longer the fall. I would be terrified of fucking up. Like I have one bad day and say something to the wrong fan.
It's a thing you have to watch. I mean, part of it is just not being a horrible person, because, like, don't be an a-hole. Just be a nice person, and then chances are you're not going to say something horrible or racist or offensive, and then you become the main character of Twitter or X or whatever it is now.
I mean, if it can happen to Neil Gaiman, it can happen to me. Right? So
Neil Gaiman didn't have to do whatever he was doing. He could have just like been monogamous or even just non-gamous, you know?
Yeah. Okay, well, that's a different topic. But like, there's like, I don't think there's anyone. It's a fault in our stars. They're like, no one's perfect, right? If you want to be religious about it, like no one's God, right? The Muslims are quite very strict about this. Like the only perfection in the world is God, and so like no one can be perfect. They all have to have their flaws. And in a society where flaws are very strongly criticized in a public way, I don't believe that I don't want to be vulnerable like that without like I don't want to that is not a price I'm willing to pay.
Fame doesn't really get you anything. It's like it doesn't really make you money unless you're an influencer, and you have the good feelings from it, but it's a mixed bag anyway once you have it. And if you lose it,
what good feelings?
Well, that's the thing. Like, it feels awesome when you're going up. Oh, people love me. They don't actually love you. They love your book or your idea or your mask. And then that breaks, and then everyone hates you, and you're like back on ground one, except now you have a legacy of people hating you, and it's miserable.
It's like, again, with the stoicism, right? Like if you it's so alluring again, right? Where like it's pride. It's putting a stake into what other people think of you. That really gets you. But let's say like you're a CEO of a company, then suddenly what you're saying has an impact on everyone who's agreed to work with you. And now suddenly you have like this huge burden on your shoulders. And I don't think it really gets you anything, because I know so many people who have money and fame and say like, the only thing it's gotten me is loneliness and only being able to hang out with all people who are just as famous as I am, and many of them are really weird. So it's very tough. Segue. Complete segue.
Can a team of has-been teen idols save the world? Find out in the new series Boy Bands and Dragons. When Neverboyland is sucked into a magical world, their reunion takes a backseat to staying alive. But if they can get over the past drama that drove them apart, they may find that even pop stars can be heroes. Come and discover your new favorite read, Our Comeback Tour is Slaying Monsters, the first in the Boy Bands and Dragons series by Kim Smuga Otto, dropping on Kindle Unlimited, October 25th.
What's one thing that you learned while writing that you would do differently now? or would do differently if you had to start again?
Well, there's two things. Business one is just had I not burned out on the City of the Dungeon, kept writing, my career would be in a completely different place because people, like, once it's been a few years, people sort of forget about you, and that's, well, there's both a fame piece, but there's also like the algorithm doesn't like you as much because it's been too long.
Yeah.
So that's my number one recommendation: is if you're in business, just keep writing. Don't slow down, even if you do hit it big. The second is, and this is a bit of a spoiler for C&D2, but it is the thing I thought about while reading the podcast like suggestions on the letter. There are some parts in C&D2 that deal with religious persecution, and I wish it handled them with more sensitivity. I wish it's a sensitive situation, and like back then I was like, oh, well, everyone feel the most emotions possible, so you'll step on the Vox pedal or whatever the pedal on the piano that makes all really loud. Some things should be soft pedaled. Some things shouldn't be shouted from the rooftops. They should be like, this happened. Like, it's not the only thing that happened. I wish if I could go back, I would have just like soft pedaled the parts. I wouldn't have taken them out, but I would have like soft pedaled them, just made them so they're not in your face. That's what I would have done if I had the chance to.
So not like centers, like not putting them like center stage, more like happening in the background. Well, like happening, not like in the background, like it's on stage, but not in the middle.
It wouldn't have to be like so overbearing in the one scene it comes. It could just be more like, this happened, and the people who did it regret it, but it wasn't like the only thing they did, because otherwise it becomes. I mean, that was one of the reasons there was such a backlash, because people didn't want to be in that position of seeing persecution from someone who should have been the hero, and it's like, well, that's not what I want to read, and that's true. Most people do not want to read about religious persecution, not even people who are religious. So, if I could go back, that is the way I would change. Also, there's an arc in the second book. It's the America arc, and if I could go back, I had a lot of time to work on it. I would just write that out, because it contains either a city or a dungeon. And it's like, why did it even happen? It got people upset. That one got people upset too, because people thought it was commentary on Trump. It wasn't. Or people thought.
Yeah.
So that's why.
That's why.
That's when I wrote my political commentary book. I thought, to write it out, all I want, and then I'll put like a trigger warning on it saying, this is political commentary. Don't like it, don't read it, and then I can be done. So I did. Yeah. It's called The Osiris War. It's out there. You can check it out.
You can read it all you want. You can loathe at it. And do you think, okay, this sounds super pretentious. Everyone's going to hate me for it. And I'm going to lampshade it very, very hard so people know that I know it's going to sound pretentious, because I have no other way of saying it. Do you think that like art should like uplift people?
Well, okay. Warning, getting Catholic. Art, if it's good art, should bring people to God. They should bring people to see the good, the true, and the beautiful. Not necessarily bring positive emotions, not even necessarily bring negative emotions, but just show people like, this world is not all there is. This world is not about atoms and molecules dumping around for all eternity with no sign or meaning. There needs to be someone saying, there is good and there is beautiful and there's the true. It may not always be visible. Maybe it gets stepped on. Maybe it doesn't fight back as easily as it should. But it is out there, and that's what I wanted to convey with my stories.
Okay. I can be behind that. I'm going to talk more about like my personal views on this, like my kind of like ideas about it in the Patreon content, because I don't think it's like it's supposed to be yours, not mine. And I've talked enough already. But going back to the things that you would have changed, like I can see where you're coming from. I feel as though lit RPG in particular, people read as escapism.
It is. It's a power fantasy. I mean, that's the long and the short of it. I mean, like, Dunja is... I mean, like, okay, I'm reading I Shall Seal the Heavens. And the thing is, it's comforting because, whatever happens, Meng Hao, or however you pronounce his name, is always going to come out top in some sort of absurd, overpowered way. relaxing to read because you're never going to be, well, something terrible's going to happen. Well, maybe, but it's going to work it out in the end. So similar like romance, people read romance because they always get together at the end. If that doesn't happen, your readers are going to like crucify you with pitchforks and I don't know, sharp nails. So in LitRPG, like the thing is, you go into the dungeon, you fight monsters, you level up. That's the story. I mean, that's why you're here, because you could finally be powerful and not fight your boss and loot because your boss is like got more power in the company over you or whatever you're dealing with in real life.
Yeah, or
boss in a LitRPG, you can't beat the boss in a corporation.
You don't have to be afraid.
Yeah, you don't have to be afraid.
Right. And I think that's like, I think Sanderson talked about this like in one of his YouTube blogs or interviews where he talked about like isekai novels in general. And I think he made a very good point that I hadn't even considered until that point, is that the isekai in of itself are all very much paradisical.
Yeah.
Because like it's about like getting a reward in the next life. Because the typical isekai is like high schooler does something good but gets hit by a bus because of it.
Yeah.
And then like that's literally like, yeah, you got your ticket to heaven, so now you get to like get to the cool stuff, right? So I think that's interesting. And I know that people aren't pretty harping on it too much. Sorry, you go.
When I wrote the city in the dungeon, part of it was I wanted to make these like archetypical things. So like the city is like this ideal of a city, and the dungeon is like an ideal of a dungeon. Because I thought, well, that's right. So the city and the dungeon, those are really the main characters. The city and the dungeon. Also, there's like heroes who fight the dungeon. I mean, really, Johnny himself said, the guy who introduced us said, dungeon is kind of the third main character, and it is.
Yeah. He talked about it on our Discord as well. I thought it was a very good point. It's very alive, right? And it's I always thought that like the second book was called "And Those Who Hate and Love It," because I really thought that like it would be about like dungeon, right? But yeah, it's hard to explain to people who haven't like written a world yet or haven't done any world building yet, but how sometimes the world becomes a character in of itself, without it having a voice. Like a character doesn't have to have a voice or doesn't have to be a human person. But I try to remember what sort of, I think it was Midnight Circus, one of those like very early postmodern books that I read, where it was like this like epistolary novel, like very interesting, but there were so many things said about this world, and about like the concept that it dealt with, that the concept itself became alive. Or for example, if you're playing Assassin's Creed, the Animus, right, the machine itself is also very much alive in that sense, because it changes, it is different every time. It is like your main point of contact with this other world. And now that I'm talking about it, oh my goodness, have I ever been influenced by that game? I've
actually never played Assassin's Creed.
Ooh, it's good.
But like, my opinion, I wrote a essay in some book that was, it's called Pulp on Pulp, if you really want to read the essay by me.
Yeah.
In the LitRPG, the system is actually the antagonist. Like the goal of the book or game, if you will, is to fight systems that you're powerful and the system is not. So even if it's like a system apocalypse where the system is literally out there to kill people, or I mean, like I think in Tao Wang's one, it's like it's literally the system designed to do something. I just read the first 3 books, but it was designed or something. I don't know, but.
I mean, I'm a system analyst in real life, so that sounds like way more boring than it actually is. Like I talk to a lot of people about a lot of things, and then I kind of see how things work together, and I see which dominoes you can push and which ones you really shouldn't push.
Yeah.
And then no one listens to me, and I earn money and get very frustrated. But you're right. It's very punk. It's like down with the system, man.
Yeah,
I like it.
I mean, like 10 Realms, I think, is the one letter RPG I've read where the system is actually theoretically good because it's supposed to fight the monsters or whatever, and all the way out in like book 8. That's the far as I got. I'm rereading it right.
I got this book that I've started. I just can't wrap my mind around because the system and the story don't match. But I don't want to change the system. I don't want to change the story either because I love both. Or like not the system, but like the main character's power set. It was called The Starlit Knight. And it's about a psychopath who gets transported into there's a system apocalypse. And the system is basically like, hey, you've been your entire planet has like over 15 trillion thousand international credits in debt, which means you're now all getting drafted except for like the 10% who like have like really good skills.
Yes.
We're gonna put them to use somewhere else. So the rest of you all to the front lines. And now they're like basically it's like Warhammer 40K-esque like frontline thing. And the main character is a psychopath, like a sociopath, or rather to say. And the only thing that really got him to like not murder people because he thought, why not, was his mom and his sister who were like, you really shouldn't do that. You're going to get like outcast out of society if you do that. Like, okay, well, that makes sense. I won't do this. But now what if the system actually rewards you for killing people?
Yeah.
Right? What happens then? And I don't know the answer because I haven't written the book. But what has become very obvious at the start is that the system boots up. And in the boot up sequence, it's quite explicitly stated that like this empire has injected some sort of like weird virus code into the system and has repurposed it. And I have like a big old like thing planned for it, but I would love to write a system that's actually good. And I don't want to spoil anything, but I will.
Okay.
So yeah. Well, as good as a system designed by humans can be, because no matter the system you design, there's always going to be someone who gets screwed over. And it just depends on who you leave out of your equations. Sorry, my system rant. Tell me about one book that you love and tell me why is it awesome.
Regression fantasy or just in general?
Just in general.
So Count to a Trillion by John C. Wright. It is a this is other people's book, right? Or Count to a Trillion by John C. Wright. It is a sort of slower than light space opera. It's about this expedition to a star made of antimatter, and they mine the antimatter and bring it back, but in the process they awaken this like alien empire that comes to subjugate her. But it's a very slow moving one because it's like got across like thousands of light years. So the story is about the hero and the villain fighting over who gets to control humanity before the aliens arrive and kill people or move people or whatever. I don't want to spoil too much of it, but it's very good. Now, the one thing I have to say, and this is the one thing I have to say, there is like a scene in book 2 or 3 which is like the guy goes to town on hating hippies, and I'm like, dude, why did you have to put that in? But aside from that, it's not really political. Himself is, but the book isn't, except for that one scene. So just be aware of that. It's only in book 3. Try the first book, and you'll probably like it. Hard sci-fi, aliens, cyber tech, AIs. It's pretty cool.
Have you read Pilgrims?
I know the guy who wrote Pilgrims, but
cool.
I haven't read himself right now. But that's the book where the dungeon crawls cry.
Jeff Hayes.
Yeah, that guy. He did the audiobook.
That guy. Yeah, he narrates it. He loves it. Yeah. And the thing is like aliens are invading Earth and they're speaking ancient Latin, and they're Catholic. So if you want to read that, go ahead. It's narrated by Jeff Hayes, and so you know it's going to be awesome. But yeah, otherwise also like do give Count to a Trillion, or
I think it's Count to a Trillion.
Count to a Trillion. Okay, yeah. I give that a try. And yeah, I think we should probably also get to the shoutouts because I believe that I may have like missed the mark on the podcast length a little bit.
We were
welcome,
so
YouTube.
Though.
It was good. But like we're gonna be doing more like after the podcast, like all the stuff. But give me some shoutouts.
So these, let's see. Rick Scott in Crystal Shards Online, his book was released literally a day between my book and his book were released like a day apart. So consider my literary twin. It's book.
Okay.
And he calls it an Untitled RPG because my friend Ben, I think he goes by Kitsun Che. The book is called Dungeon Samurai. He himself, he calls it writing against the market. He writes books that call the tropes of various markets dumb. And so basically it's like this, he's a martial artist, and this detailed martial arts scenes as this military campaign against a dungeon. It's not just like adventurers. They got like forward operating bases and ranks and officers. They're systematically fighting this dungeon because if they don't get stuck in the alternate dimension, and probably die.
Wait, which one is that? That is
Dungeon Samurai. Dungeon Samurai.
Ah, cool.
It's not quite progressive fallacy because they don't really level up, but they have skills and there's no stats, but they fight, and is
it PF? Is it progression fantasy?
I don't think it's technically progression fantasy because it's not. There's no progression, but it does have some of the tropes.
But there's fantasy.
It is fantasy.
Well, that's half of it. Okay. I have one last shout out that I think you might enjoy if you enjoyed Count to a Trillion. There's a video game that is about uniting Earth's factions before the aliens arrive, and I'm not quite sure what it was called. Yes, exactly. Terra Invictus, yeah.
I saw it and I might enjoy it. The thing is, I don't have as much time to game as I used to, so I'm just mostly playing Factorio. I really like Factorio, so
it's I really would like to have some more time to game as well. Like right now, I am playing on the weekends. I'm playing a couple of hours of Nordhold, the demo. Pretty cool. It's a tower defense roguelike, where you have to like build a city every time. It's fun. And then the other one that I'm playing is Shape of Dreams, also a demo. It's an action roguelike. I like my roguelikes because they're easy and quick to play.
Yeah.
And yeah, there's like one other game that I've recently played for research reasons, of course, obviously, and it's called Heart of the Machine. It looks super jank, but there's nothing like this game. The only thing that really comes to mind that it resembles is kind of like The Guild, which is like a very old German game. It is a think of like a traditional like role-playing game, like you're playing one character, not a party, but it is also an RTS. So you're playing like it's round based, and you're playing this AI, and you can be like either Shodan, or you can be Aleph, or you can be like any other AI. It's a lot of choices, lots of ways of like going about it, and the end of the first run kind of surprised me. I gotta be honest, like that I did not see that coming in that way, and it was done pretty well. So I recommend it. It's a bit convoluted. You're gonna have to like probably read a guide, but I recommend it. It's a fun game to like waste a day or two on. Totally.
So also, if I could do an auto shout out, just because this is a book I like and want to get out to more people. My Girlfriend the Witch Queen. It is my paranormal romance. It has some.
My Girlfriend the what?
Witch Queen. My Girlfriend the Witch Queen.
My Girlfriend the Witch Queen. Okay.
It's about Okay, so Lynn the Witch Queen, she conquers the world with this army of demons. And this ordinary lumberjack from Tennessee, what was once Tennessee because it's been conquered, goes and tries to get her help to help his village. And then he accidentally foils an assassination attempt, so she makes him her official boyfriend. And it's like a rom-com, what do you call it, fake relationship thing. It's really So if you're into criminal romance at all, or even just romance, try it out. It's me writing it. It's just a different genre completely than lit RPG.
I mean, while we're at it, like you can also try The Complicated Love Life of Evil Antagonist.
Oh,
which is Warhammer 40k meets The Expanse meets like basically what if the like God Emperor of Earth was like female and like really want to get laid, and like well not like get laid, but like conquered the entire solar system, like did everything, is like intergalactic emperor is like super OP right from the start, but also really wants a relationship, and like who can you date when you're like the God Emperor? And so she flies to an oracle, and that oracle is on a planet that is literally run by a cult of clowns. It is insanely funny. It's written by Raven's Dagger, so you know there's going to be lesbians. So read it. It's fun.
Yeah.
It's really fun. All right. With that being said, I think we are reaching the end of our allotted YouTube time. And also, I have enough. I had too much fun. I have to pay my fun back in German tax.
Right.
So, Matthew, thank you so much.
You're welcome.
We're going to keep talking for a little bit longer after the show is over on Patreon. So if you want to listen to us ramble a bit more, go on, subscribe. Otherwise, please do leave a like, please subscribe, please follow on whatever platform you're using. It really helps out a lot. And also, like, it helps my ego because we talked about this. Like, I really need validation.
Nice.
All right. With that being said, unless you have anything else to say,
that's basically it.
Okay. Go read The City in a Dungeon. And with that being said, I'll see you next time. And we're waving. And if you're on Patreon, the show goes on, and we are here